I've been a truck driver for more than 20 years, and I've been through things that many people wouldn't believe. But what happened that night left me unexplained to this day. I was driving down a deserted highway, in the middle of nowhere, when I started to see a car stopped with the emergency lights on. I was a little suspicious, because this stretch is known to be dangerous, and broken cars there are not something rare. At first, I thought about continuing, but a strange feeling made me slow down. The woman who was outside the car seemed to be panicking. She looked at me, but in a strange way, as if she wasn't really seeing me. His eyes were fixed on nothing, without focus, as if he were in a trance. It made me freeze inside, but the worst thing was to realize that around the car, there were footprints on the grass that went towards the turf, but none came back. At that moment, a chill took over me. Something was wrong, I knew it. Even with the woman there, trying to get my attention, the footprints that moved away without going back, and the feeling that I wasn't seeing everything, made me accelerate without thinking twice. I didn't look back, and neither did the woman. I don't know if she saw me leaving, but I had the feeling that something didn't want me to stop there. The next day, I heard on the radio that someone else had stopped exactly in the same place, at the same point on the highway. But this person disappeared. They said they didn't find the car, nor traces of where it was. It was as if the man had simply evaporated, and that made my stomach turn. How is it possible that something like this happened? That morning, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The details were still fresh in my mind. The footprints going into the forest, the woman out of her mind, without looking directly at me, as if she were being pulled somewhere. I wondered what could have happened to the other driver who stopped there after me. They said his car was found, but the man was never found, as if he had disappeared from the face of the earth. No one knew how to explain, not even the police, but the feeling I had was that there was something else behind it, something we can't see, but that somehow watches you all the time. I went to the gas station where I always stop, and there, one of the gas station attendants told me that the same thing happened to him, years ago, in that same stretch. He said that the woman's story was already spinning the smatey mouth, but no one knew what it really was. He himself said that if he had seen that car, he would never have stopped. That story stayed in my head for weeks. I tried to convince myself that it was just a coincidence or something I had invented, but I knew it wasn't. The feeling of being watched has always accompanied me since that night, as if there was something waiting, something that watched us in the darkness of that road. I never went through that stretch again without looking quickly to the sides, looking for something, or someone. What disturbs me is knowing that maybe one day I can be next. I know what I saw, and I know that that kind of thing is not something you want to find by chance. And the question that remains is, what would have happened to me if I had stopped? Would it be the disappearance like the other, or would there be something worse waiting? The scariest of all is knowing that the road still holds that mystery. I don't know what happened to the woman, nor to the other driver, but something tells me that that place is marked by something we don't understand. If you ask the drivers who work on that route, they will always say the same thing. Never stop there at night for nothing. Something there is waiting, and no one knows what it is. Since then, I've never been on that road without a chill in my spine. And you, have you ever been on a deserted road at night and had the feeling that you were being watched? What would you do if you found yourself in a situation like this? I was coming back from a trip, that typical weekend trip, and the road was empty, as always on Sunday nights. It was late, and the feeling of tiredness only increased as I drove along the deserted road. Suddenly, I realized something strange. A car was behind me, but without headlights. I didn't know if the guy was trying to scare me or if he had a problem in the car, but the fact is that he was there, approaching faster and faster. I tried to accelerate a little to see if he passed, but he stayed behind me, always at the same distance. At each turn, he slowed down, and when I accelerated, he did the same. I was agonized, but at the same time, I didn't want to stop in the middle of the road. The worst was the feeling that he was intentionally following me, no matter what I did. I looked at the mirrors and only saw the contour of the car, without headlights, without any light that could give me some clue of who was there. The road seemed to never end, and the more I tried to escape, the more the car was behind me. I knew that if I stopped, I couldn't predict what would happen, so I tried to keep driving, still with that feeling of panic growing inside me. But it was when I finally entered a busier area, with lights and some cars, that the car disappeared. I looked at the mirrors, and suddenly, he was no longer there. Nothing. It was as if he had disappeared overnight. My heart was still racing, and I couldn't understand what had just happened. I thought it was just a coincidence, but weeks later, something made me think about it again. Weeks later, while having coffee and browsing the news, I came across a headline that made me freeze. Women being chased by criminal in a car without headlights. The criminal's description was vague, but it mentioned that the car he drove was exactly the same model I had seen behind me. And the tactics? The same: stay behind, without overtaking, accelerating and slowing down. The feeling of panic I took at that moment was indescribable, as if reality had turned upside down. What made me even more disturbed was knowing that this criminal was going after women, and I could easily have been one of the victims if I had done anything different that night. The fear didn't pass, in fact, it increased. I was obsessed with the idea that maybe he was watching me since that day. I remember that when I saw the news, my whole body froze, and at the same time, I had a feeling of helplessness. I had been one of the targets, but for some reason, he hadn't attacked. And the strangest thing was that, when I tried to tell friends and family, everyone thought I was exaggerating, as if it was just a coincidence. I kept wondering, was he really after me? Or would it be just a misunderstanding? But deep down, I knew something was very wrong, and the fear of seeing that car again never left me alone. To this day, whenever I see a car coming without headlights, my stomach wraps. The worst thing is that we will never know who the man behind those persecutions is. The scariest thing of all is that, to this day, I don't know what really happened that night. What I know is that I never traveled alone on deserted roads at night. Something in those chases tells me that there is much more behind it than I imagine. The thought that I could have been another victim haunts me, and the fear of seeing that car again never left me. I never saw that man again, but the memory of what happened accompanies me whenever the road is empty. And you, have you ever had the feeling of being followed by someone on the road? What would you do if you were in my place? It was a quiet dawn, and I was on a long trip, crossing the deserted road with few stops. The 24H station seemed like the only decent place to refuel on that stretch. The weak lighting of the station, the feeling of isolation, and the silence only increased the loneliness of the road. When I stopped, everything seemed normal. The gas station attendant was there, but besides him, the place was empty, without movement. I quickly refueled and entered the store to pay. There was no one else at the post. The air conditioning was buzzing inside, and the only sound was that of the card machine passing through my hand. I even thought about leaving soon, because the road was calling me, but something in the stillness of that station seemed strange. When I left the gas station, I noticed a van stopped next to my car. There was no one around, which made me even more uncomfortable. What really made me freeze was seeing a man trying to open the back door of my car. He had his head down, as if he was checking something, and didn't even notice that I had left the post. I stopped, kind of paralyzed, just watching, and he raised his head as soon as he saw me. His look was not normal, it seemed empty, as if he had no emotion at all. When he realized that I had noticed, he simply got into the van and, without haste, slowly left the station. I couldn't understand what had happened, but something inside me told me to leave as soon as possible. I went to the gas station attendant and said what I had seen. He seemed indifferent, even bored, and told me to be calm, but I couldn't. The next day, I went to the police station and filed the complaint. That night was in my head. I couldn't understand what had happened at the gas station, but the feeling of having escaped something much worse haunted me. When I made the complaint, the police asked me to wait a little longer before leaving. The man I saw trying to open my car was already known in the investigations. They showed me a picture of him, and the impact was immediate. That man was linked to a series of kidnappings that had occurred on highways in the region, all with victims traveling alone at night. I almost couldn't believe what I was seeing. That van, the strange behavior, everything now made sense in a terrible way. I just wanted to get out of there, but before, the police told me that, although they were already investigating the case, my report could be crucial for an arrest. I got a huge weight in my chest, not only because of what could have happened, but because I knew that maybe I had been the target of something much darker. The worst of all was what they said later. The police told me that same night, 2 other people had reported something similar, at gas stations on the same road. And the scariest, in both cases, the same man was involved. He followed the victims during the night, acting calmly, without haste, as if he were hunting. I felt in shock, as if the world around me had become more dangerous than I ever imagined. And what left me most perplexed was that, after the complaint, the man disappeared completely. There were no more signs of him, as if he had disappeared overnight. I still wonder, to this day, how many people he had already approached without anyone noticing the real risk. The feeling that it could have been me haunts me. Since that night, I have never traveled alone on deserted highways at night. The idea that that man was lurking, perhaps waiting for an opportunity, gives me goosebumps to this day. The strangest thing is that, even after all the investigation, he was never found. Maybe somewhere, he's still waiting for the next victim. And the feeling of being followed? This is a feeling I could never forget. And you? Have you ever been through a situation in which you felt you were being followed on a deserted road? What would you do if you had seen something like that?